I'm glad we could do this, and I really have read a great deal of the book. It's really good, And you did this communication study. We'll want to talk about that.
Yes,
Yeah.
I did. The whole thing started because I was not an easy child, which I know is hard to understand. We won't go into that. No, God forbid we should do that.
Welcome very much. Welcome to Conversations, where it's a pleasure to welcome to the program Lucinda Watson. And Lucinda Watson has written a book, a very interesting book that I want to show right here at the outset. And here we can see, this is what it looked like in the bookstores. And it's called How They Achieved, and it's a story, it's a constellation of interviews and exchange with some of our successful business and nonprofit leadership and so forth. And Lucinda, welcome very, very much to Conversations.
Thank you very much.
And to Manhattan Network.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
My pleasure. Now, we have a whole hour, so we can talk. We want to talk about the books and highlight some of the things you have in there, but maybe you could share a little of your own background. You're saying you were a little precocious as a youngster or something. Maybe you can share a little of your own background, and then also your academic work, because that's relevant, but maybe some of your background, then we can get into the substance of the book. But
oh, that's funny. Well, no, I was going to say
yes,
that when I was growing up, one of the phrases that people used to say to their kids, and I don't know if you remember this, but sticks and stones will break your bones, but words will never hurt you.
Or names will never hurt you.
Names will never hurt
you.
Yes,
right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I would hear that. My mother would say that, and I'd hear that, and I think, is she crazy? To me, names were so much more painful than sticks and stones.
Right.
And
okay.
So I became fascinated as a little kid with words.
Yeah. Okay.
And my father, growing up, was the president of IBM.
Yeah. Very responsible job. Yeah.
Very responsible job. And my grandfather started the company, but in our house, I remember my father almost every night practicing his speeches. And he would use something called a dictaphone, which in those days was the early tape recorder. And he'd be in his library after dinner practicing these speeches, and I would be sitting outside listening to what he said. And he was so intent on reaching his audience and being such a good communicator, and I think that was part of his great success in business.
Okay.
That the interest in that kind of rubbed off on me.
I see. Yeah, the art and skill and science of good communication is really important, increasingly so. Yeah.
So, well, you're in the communication business.
I guess that's true. I hadn't thought about it, but I guess that is true. Yeah, we are. Yeah. But so you followed through on that academically,
I did. I had a very important job for the first 35 years of my life. I had 3 children, and I was a stay-at-home mom till I was about 35. And I had done a lot of volunteer work until that time, and some other things with my kids. But I really didn't have any idea what I wanted to do as a career. I knew I had to have one. It's very important to me. So I got this big fat brochure from a local university, and I always read things from the back to the front.
You do?
Yeah.
I don't know. No, there's something for that. The index is a good place to begin often, yeah.
It's really strange.
Yeah. Where was that? Was that in California?
In San Francisco.
You were raised in San Francisco? Okay, yeah.
I was actually raised in Connecticut, but
I see.
I had moved to San Francisco.
Right.
But it was so interesting because I had been in the theater, I had been in public speaking, I had been studying psychology, and I went through the whole book and finally got to the C's, and it said communication.
Right.
And I thought, wow, this is a really fascinating field.
All right.
Because it's something where, most people learn to give speeches, and most people learn to somehow get along with the person that they live with, hopefully, or talk to their children. But if you really want to be a good communicator, you really have to understand all sorts of different nuances that happen in the whole process.
Okay.
And like small group communication, what happens within a small group in terms of leadership or not leadership, who's ignored, who isn't. What happens in one-on-one communication is also interesting, and nonverbal communication. So I got a master's degree in the subject.
In communication?
In communication.
Would that have been like public, or in
it is.
speech
It's like,
department or something? Or,
exactly.
Okay. Right.
It's public speaking, nonverbal communication, interpersonal communication.
Right.
But at the time, I was very interested in organizational communication because my background had been involved with observing these successful people.
Yes, indeed. They would have been around the dinner table.
Oh, they were.
Sure, right.
Were.
Yeah, well, that's a very good university education in itself.
I know.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So I enjoyed doing that very much. But as a part of this teaching, I started to interview chief executive officers of corporations in Northern California.
I see.
And I was interested in their information-seeking behavior, which really is, if you're the head of a corporation, how do you receive information on what's happening within that corporation?
Right.
And, some people prefer to just ask one person. And some people in the newer corporations today access many different people on many different levels.
I see. Okay.
But at this time, it was 15 years ago, and the leaders that I interviewed were all in their 50s and all male. And my thesis was what I would find is that most of them did not talk to very many people to find out what was happening within the corporation.
They would rely upon the mayordomo or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the longer they were in a position, the less information they would seek. Because if you're in a position of leadership, in the beginning, like Bush is now, is all excited, and you're going out and talking to all these different people.
Yeah.
But as time goes on, you get more relaxed, and you think you know it all, and that's when I think your leadership needs to be challenged.
I see. Yeah. And you studied that from a public speaking perspective.
Yeah.
You were doing like a master's degree or something, and that was a project. Or
that was
something.
my project.
I want to back up a little bit. You said you'd done some acting. You had been on the stage. You had
I did.
aspirations for a thespian career or something.
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Did you follow through on that, or was
Well, a little bit. I mean, it was funny for me because all through college and high school, that's what I did. And my parents would come to the performances.
Yes, right.
And believe it or not, that's what my dad wanted me to do.
Yeah. And did you have a feeling for that? I mean, did you enjoy it?
I did enjoy it. But I think I'm one of those people that, believe it or not, Harold, I'm inherently shy.
You are shy? You don't seem shy at all,
I'm covered up.
You're just overcoming. This is all just a
This
facade, huh? Okay.
This is an act.
Yeah.
It's a big act. But seriously, as a child, I was really shy.
Yeah, all right.
But I always believed, and this is going to sound corny,
All right.
that if you push yourself, you can get over things that frighten you.
That's an interesting lesson could be learned, yeah. Right.
And I had to, I was so shy I literally wouldn't leave the house.
Really?
But as I got older, I thought it was getting in the way of my being a success in the world. So I'd make myself take public speaking seriously and go into contests and make myself be in plays and, try to be an actress and all those things.
To try and get over the shyness.
Yeah.
Huh? And did it work?
Well, I think it did because
because
I still certainly feel shy in certain situations, but I now know that almost everybody does.
Yes, right, okay.
And when I was teaching at Berkeley in the business school, I had a lot of students who were incredibly shy and uncomfortable in their interviews. And it was always my job to try to build them up and make them be more confident.
Yes.
And I think I could do that because I had definitely been there.
I see, yeah, okay. Well, it's an important subject. Increasingly is, particularly as we come into a multimedia world, all forms of communication become really very important.
Yes.
And they always have been, I guess. I mean, sometimes it's within an organization which isn't reaching out to a big public or a thing, but the communication is of the essence in terms of, as you indicate, people that have been successful or to leading a successful life in a world where there are other people and entities to be communicated with. That's an important lesson to be learned.
It's so important. And it's so often that things happen that shouldn't have happened. I mean, I went on a conference. I'm lucky enough to be on the board of an institute at Brown University that my father actually started. And when he died, my mother took over his place, but then she felt that I would be more interested in doing it than she was as I had more time. So luckily I've been on that board now for 5 or 6 years, and we actually went to Vietnam because part of the focus of this institute is Ways to Resolve Conflict in the World.
What is the name of the institute?
The Watson Institute.
It's just the Watson Institute in International Understanding or something? Or
thank you. It's the Watson Institute for International Relations.
All right, good.
University.
Yeah, increasingly important, yeah.
And they study conflicts that have already happened in the world and also ways to prevent them in the future.
Right.
And they teach history. One of the programs that I think is so interesting is they teach children ways of looking at historical events differently, so that the children actually get involved in playing roles and acting out various conflicts that have happened, so that they can understand both sides to the event.
Yeah.
And the thing that was so interesting to me about Vietnam was that culturally the Vietnamese are very, very different than we are in terms of how they communicate.
All right. Yeah.
And the purpose of this meeting was to discuss what went wrong during the war and why the conflicts escalated the way that they did. And Robert McNamara...
Big subject, yes.
Oh.
Yeah. Yes.
Robert McNamara came, too.
Oh, right. He's involved with the Institute?
No, he came as... because, remember, during the war, his position was key in our involvement.
Absolutely. And he wrote that incredible book 5 years ago or so saying we did a boo-boo there.
I know.
Yeah.
Now, wasn't that interesting?
It was. It was a very strong position he took, and there's more of that coming out now. You know, they had a piece in 60 Minutes the other night that was showing some people there saying that there were some wrong things that we did. We ought to face up to it. You know. That's, yeah. But anyway.
But I think that's probably true, don't you? That it's better if you look back on your life and you feel that you have made a mistake to
own up to it.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's happening around the world now. I mean, what the Germans have gone through that in the case of the Nazi things that took place there, and other countries have gone off the track. Or it is probably good for individuals too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great deal of what psychotherapy might be about. Things that are suppressed and so forth. Do well to get them out so that you can, you know, get you know, I don't know. It's just a thought that occurred to me.
No, but I think that's interesting.
Yeah, right.
How you went there, that is very true. Because they believe, I think, that if you've had incredible trauma that you suppress and then you talk about it, just the reliving of it will make it go away.
Well, yeah, it's a lot of what talking therapy is about and that sort of thing. And it's important. And that also... Like that, my son is doing social work. I'm proud of him. He's doing a really good job. And I talked to him on the phone the other day, and he has empathetic capability. I mean, some people are empathetic more than others. That is, they're able to put themselves in the position of the person to whom they're relating in a way that some people have difficulty getting outside of their own ego or something like that. So that's important, and I suppose that's important, or an important distinction in the way in which human beings communicate. Some people are more empathetic than others? Is that an important part of communication?
Well, now I'm going to ask you a question.
All right.
How do you think your son learned that, or do you think he was born with it?
I don't know. That's a big question, isn't it? Whether there's a thing as a genetic inclination toward that or not. I suppose it's a combination, isn't it? I think most things are. There's a combination of a genetic given that you have and then nurture or the situation, you know, that they're in. I don't know. I'm just very proud of him. He's really a beautiful guy.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
Because I think being a social worker today would be about the most difficult profession you could choose.
It's terribly draining because there's a lot of dysfunction. There's a lot of alienation.
Hopelessness.
And hopelessness among a great numbers of people at all levels of society, too. I just was talking, I saw a program on the C-SPAN, you know, that Brian Lambs put together, and it was with the trade representatives of the past administrations, and that's becoming increasingly important, and they had Barshevsky and the people that have been, and then they had one who said that they were trying to understand the world, and the trade representative, as we globalize, becomes very important as a representative of the CEO of the country, as it were. And they said that they sense that there is in the world a widespread sort of free-floating angst that they have a hard time accounting for, and it was just a thing that was struck me that there's something there that people feel there's a sense of, even though a lot of people are doing well, but there are a lot of people who feel there's some new thing that's needed that doesn't surface enough among the opinion leaders. It was just a side of an aside, you know.
You know, I think that's so true. And it's funny because I think about that all the time.
You do?
Yes. I'm always interested in human nature because I've also been interested in philosophy and religion and
Yeah.
spirituality. And I remember I was taking a course this fall in psychology of illness,
Mm-hmm.
which was very interesting. But part of the course was kind of a brief history on the origin of stress today. And,
Interesting.
and
Yeah.
I mean, this professor was saying that he felt it was very simple, that years ago, centuries ago, when people lived in a village, they had a father and a mother and a family. They lived in one house.
Right.
They went to work in their field.
Right.
They had a church.
Mm-hmm.
They had the same thing that they did every day for their entire life.
Yes. Yes. That's right.
And then suddenly that changed, and people started to have to move.
Mm-hmm.
And outside their
How
various...
disruptive, really.
really
How
disruptive.
yeah.
So disruptive.
Yeah, and yet people take it as just
Mhm.
everyday necessity or something.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I understand.
I mean, it's so, and then you look at that, and then you look at what we have today,
Mm-hmm.
which is no family, basically.
Yeah.
I remember reading something about National Merit semifinalists.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing those kids had in common
Was
that they'd all eaten dinner together with their family.
interesting. Very
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, right.
Because, I mean, most kids today, they don't have dinner with their parents. They don't have much connection. 50% live in families with only one parent.
Yeah. Terrible
And-
the way the family
yeah.
is falling apart. Yeah, it
So
is.
there's no protection
Yeah, that's right.
or safety.
Yeah.
And remember Abraham Maslow with the triangle of needs?
Yeah, the hierarchy of
Hierarchy
needs.
of needs.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
everything.
How are you going to reach? No, I don't at all. But he had his self-actualization at the
Yes.
top. Yeah. And how are going to people realize that if they have
Can't
all
feel
these
safe.
traumas going? Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. And nurtured at the
Yeah.
early stages. We don't give enough credence to that. And
Yeah.
it's galloping in the modern experience. I just spoke with somebody. Apparently, Homo sapiens sapiens, we all come out of a common gene pool.
Mm-hmm.
Small, very small.
Mm-hmm.
Individual, perhaps, if they measure mitochondrial. 200,000 years. All 6 billion of us come from this small gene pool out of Africa. So it's 10,000 generations, more or less. And the changes that are coming is so disruptive with patterns that are probably held throughout
Mhm.
the, literally, tens of millennia,
Wow.
are being disrupted in the modern experience. So it is a time of great stress and difficulty, yeah.
Yeah, now I wonder, too, especially you know more about this than me, but the genetic changes are happening so much more rapidly. I mean, just the fact that our environment has become so unsafe and polluted, and the ozone layer disappearing, and
Yeah.
the air that we breathe being unbreathable.
Mhm.
And so within 1 or 2 generations, we have these genetic alterations that are happening, and more cancers developing. And
Yeah, that's something.
You
yeah.
know, it is-
Yeah, I
it
haven't been
is-
as aware of that as I should be, but that's true. I don't know the form of mutations. And now they got genetic engineering this
I
time. I
know.
just spoke to you
I
before
know.
the camera
About the
that they
strawberry
crossed
and
the,
fish.
they crossed the fish with a strawberry.
That
they took
I
the
still
gene-
can't believe. It's
no, but
so
that's only
bizarre.
just the start. It's only just the start of what they can do in terms of, and they made the strawberry resistant to frost because the fish was resistant to cold, and it worked.
I can't believe
And
that.
there's some people
That's
say, boy,
amazing.
that's meddling with
That-
nature
but
in a
that-
really profound kind of way.
It
you know?
is.
Yeah.
It's an unbelievable
Yeah, and it's
story.
only just starting, I think, that bioengineering and so forth. It's a big issue. There's many big issues confronting us. At the same time, we live in a time, the Chinese, what they said, spare me from living in interesting times, and I'm afraid we're doomed not to have that, because these are very interesting times. I mean, all these things that are going on now make it an incredibly exciting and challenging time. With all the things, we got the genome now. We got a knowledge base. We're learning in a way that makes this a very interesting and challenging time, but those times can be difficult to live through.
I think so too. I also think it's funny. There are so many people who are skeptical about religion and spirituality.
Mm.
And, in a way, I certainly would never criticize anybody else's views on the afterlife or the
Yeah.
life we're in, but I do feel that it's comforting. Like I was telling you earlier about this article in the New York Times on the nuns
Yes.
and why some of these nuns live to be 120 and were perfectly cogent and amazing. And, one of the nuns was quoted as saying at the end of the article that she felt it was because she'd lived a life of empathy. Just what
really,
we were talking
really,
about
that's interesting.
before.
Yeah, that's
Helping other people,
Yeah.
caring about other people.
Right.
Because I think it's that weird thing that we can't explain that's not like a biological thing, but maybe it is, that if we feel empathic towards someone else, somehow it's soothing to us.
Yeah, I think there's a lesson to be learned there.
Yeah.
Not only to ourselves, but also maybe to the other biologicals.
Yeah.
Dog, I got a dog. Boy, I'll tell you.
Now,
That's love.
Would you
That's
clone,
love.
would you,
That's
I want to ask,
not ever.
Would
Boy,
you,
that's
would
the
you
best
clone
bet.
that dog?
I might consider
you
in that
could clone
case.
him,
Yeah, I might.
would you do that?
I tell you. Well, you know what I mean. I mean,
I have a dog too.
You do? What kind? Well,
golden retriever.
All right. Yeah. All right. That's
What kind do you have?
a Jack Russell Terrier.
Oh, those are so cute.
He's so funny. A million laughs a day.
So cute.
Funny. They got more personality than.
I
But
know.
but there's a lesson in that too, also, because I mean, we don't want to get too far, and we got to get to the book.
No, but
because
I like talking about dogs.
I know. It's all. Yeah. I like. Well, he's a super dog, but and it
Yeah.
gets people think that way. But they get, they come down with his genome now, and they say there's 100. I was really amazed that it was true. I had to check it. 100 trillion cells
Oh, my goodness.
in a human organism. 100 trillion. And each cell is semi-permeable. It must be for the blood supply to be able to take the energy and all that. I mean, and the DNA links all those cells together as a system.
That's amazing.
And each cell is in communication with all the others, So the pleas toward autarky on the part, either individualism, runaway individualism, or greed or selfishness or something, just doesn't work in terms of the way the biological system does. And we've got so many human beings of the 6 billion that are not able to participate anything like their full potential. And there's something lacking. And there's going to be a lesson in terms of if it's justice, but it's not just justice, it's also biologically decreed in a sense that we all have to have a situation where everybody becomes healthily engaged in manifesting their self-actualization, as Maslow would say. I think in a way that we have to learn that perhaps more than we have. Do you think? Or
I really do.
You do?
I really do.
That's a big lesson.
Yeah, it is a big lesson.
Yeah.
But one thing I was thinking about the other day is I find, and you're probably going to think this is strange, but having moved from California, I find there is more road rage in New England.
Really?
I
Than
don't
California?
know why. You would think California filled with kooks.
Yeah.
But I drive around New England, and here is this, relatively privileged group of people.
Yeah.
And I cannot believe, and being in a car is like my own little sociological experiment.
Well, it is indeed.
I always feel like people's driving behavior is
Speaks worlds.
Really
Speaks worlds, yes.
Speaks worlds.
Yeah.
And I've noticed for me that as the years have gone on, if I'm in a car and someone threatens my life, which often happens, they drive too close to you, they cut you off,
But you think those
whatever.
cars racing by on the highway, that's all the time. And
yeah,
we have a
just-
great faith just to go out on the road
Exactly.
in a certain sense. But still, yeah.
Or
but
let
we
your
do it.
children out on the road.
Yeah.
Remember when your son got his driver's license?
Oh,
how
yeah.
scared you must have been?
Well, I wasn't, because he
You
was
weren't?
always, no, he seemed to have it all under control. No, it's just this thing, I wasn't, no. But
See, I wasn't
as
scared.
it happened, because he's always been well put together.
Yeah. I wasn't really scared either, but I think I worry too much about my children. And my son said to
how
me,
old are they?
well, they're 20, 22, and 27.
Okay. Great.
But my son said to me something very smart. He said, Mom, if you worry so much about me, it makes me feel like I can't take care of myself.
Right, yeah, we got to let them go.
And so
my
you
mother
do.
said, you got to let them go, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was hard, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
really hard.
But you find more road rage here.
Oh, yeah. And then the thing is, Harold, do you ever remember, like, when somebody really annoys you and you're in your car and you react? I mean, God forbid we should ever admit, in your irrational way. And you find yourself, exactly.
Yeah.
And then what I do now is, and I learned this from my friend Jack Cornfield, who's a Buddhist monk, in my book.
He's one of the 20. How many are there in there?
There are 20.
20, okay. 20 people that you had
20
interviewed,
people.
those are the successful people.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But Jack teaches meditation, and once he was telling some joke about road rage. I can't remember what, but he's such a funny man.
Yeah.
And he was saying, just when the next time that happens to you, stop for a moment if you can, and think about what has happened to your body during this incident.
Rage,
your heartbeat's racing, your muscles are all tense, you've gotten all this energy
got that
up,
headache,
just a headache.
Yeah, right.
And so now I try to think to myself, what, am I crazy?
Yeah.
I'm going to let some other stranger in a car deprive me of however many minutes that might take off my life.
Well,
for
that's wise. That's
reacting.
very wise, and we should think that. Why do people react so like that, I think, do you think? Why is it it's stress?
It's
a manifestation of stress and alienation. Is that too strong a word?
No, I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think it's alienation.
So we got a lot of problems.
I think we have a lot of problems. And the funny thing about it, too, is that there are ways. I mean, it's like if you're going to go on a diet, if you're going to have to stop smoking, or if you're going to have to do any of those things, you have to make this daily practice of saying to yourself, all right, today I'm not going to eat cookies. Right, one day at a time.
Yeah, right.
Or I'm not going to smoke, or I'm not going to do this. And it's like a practice. I think what gets you back towards more peaceful style of living is to make a daily practice of saying to yourself, you know, today I'm going to be loving and forgiving in the world.
Yeah.
And just have these affirmations. Like, because the other thing I was thinking about the other day is how much we punish ourselves with a little internal dialogue.
Don't they, though? Don't people? Yeah, that's true.
I mean, do you do that?
Oh, sometimes. Try not to. Try to gain some wisdom and try and step outside and see it in a larger picture and so forth. If you can, there's wisdom in that, but it's difficult. People react from emotional threat. There's a thing called flight or
fight or flight.
Fight or flight or something that's probably programmed into us from 10,000 generations on the Serengeti plain running away from leopards, you know, and probably had a genetic thing, but I'm not sure if it applies now. And I mean, there are some people who feel very threatened by the situation in which they find themselves for perhaps economic reasons. That's a large factor, I think, and that sort of thing. It's hard to understand. This is the stuff of trying to understand the human condition, which we all should do, you know, but I'm not sure, you know, where that comes from. I think it might have a great deal to do with economics, or does it? Now, wait a minute. You've talked to 20 people in the book. Let's say some of the people who have been successful that were in your bailiwick, as it were, and so forth. That you did. You talked before about your academic studying of some of the business people, and now this book. What about the book itself and the people you've talked to in here, and how did it come about, and who are some of the people you talked to?
You know,
we only got an hour, you know. Unfortunately.
I know. You know what was so funny, though, is that back to this conversation about why is this stress happening and why are people so disjointed and everything else. One of the reasons that I wanted to write the book is I did teach for 10 years in the business school at the University of California, Berkeley.
Yes.
And my job there was to coach people to do better in interviews. That was the bottom line. But really what I did was counsel people to believe in themselves and to believe in their choice of a career. Because there's this certain term called cognitive dissonance. You know, and that's kind of what I meant by those little voices in your head. And we all have them some of the time, and we just choose whether we're going to listen to them or not. And when they get so loud that they're saying, you're in the wrong job, this is terrible, why are you doing this, get out, you got to move, then we usually change our jobs. But many people have this level of cognitive dissonance, and they can't really get up the energy to allow that voice to be heard because fear plays such a huge role, as we were talking about before.
They can't let this voice, this Jiminy Cricket voice of good conscience, or
no, it's
the
more,
voice of self-deprecation.
Right, the self-deprecation, and you know, also, I mean, I call it. Sometimes I sound like a person with multi-personalities here. Sorry.
We probably all do, to a degree,
sure. But it's like, to me, when it's your instinct. That's what I think we all need to connect with more, is that we somehow, when we're children, we know what we like. You know, we say, I don't like meat, and I like fish, and I don't like purple, and I like green.
Yeah, right.
But by the time we're 20, we're saying, well, you know, meat might be okay. Do you like meat?
Yeah.
And we're like trying to figure out what the world thinks we should do.
Yeah, okay.
So that's what I think.
And it is a balance.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I think makes it so hard for people to decide what kind of career they want, because they're trying to choose between what their parents think they should be doing, what their image of themselves in the world thinks they should be doing, and what really brings them pleasure in their work, they've often lost track of.
We have educational systems, we have mentors, we have this sort of thing that is existing within very good schools, something they go to give them some clues to how they could do that. Do you think those institutions are failing in allowing the person to find the inner core of what it is they really want to do? Do you think it's the society is set up to where I was in the Army and I wanted to sleep till 10 in the morning, but the sergeant said
They wouldn't let you?
They wouldn't let you. Do you
So
understand what I'm
mean.
saying? You know what I'm saying? So that there are these nurturing or socializing institutions and so forth that are failing in terms of allowing people to find that pathway, whether it's in business or in some nonprofit or some artistic vision or from whatever it is. We want them to realize their full potentiality if we can. There's something that's preventing or making more difficult people finding that on an individual basis than historically was the case? Do you think that is the case?
I think some...
And the trendings are in that direction?
Yes.
Really?
I think some schools are failing. I think some are succeeding. But I think the balance is more on the side of those that are failing. And I think schools are failing for all the reasons that we've read about, but primarily the role of a teacher in this country is really not that of a revered person.
No, hardly at all.
Nor are they paid. And so, most teachers burn out after 7 or 8 years. And that's why we have these problems trying to recruit new teachers or even putting teachers in a classroom where there's violence. I mean, teachers have to worry about, are they going to be safe?
Or in an environment that has that. The environment is there, and there's social institutions that do that sort of thing. But to the people in your book and the people that have become successful, and you said how they achieved in personal achievement and business success, you wanted to deal with them. You were in the School of Business at Berkeley and so forth. Now, there are people that were, did you find commonality between these people in terms of, had they found a passion that was important to them, that they're really doing what they really want to do? Is that an important characteristic? Or are there common characteristics? Because some of them are in the nonprofit world, some are in the business world. Are there, maybe you could speak to what some of the commonalities between these people that you interviewed, and maybe tick off a few of who they were, and we could talk to that a little. Without getting off the track.
Without, that would be impossible for us, I think. I think that the one common characteristic of all these people was that they never doubted that they would succeed.
Succeed?
Yes, they did.
It's a big word.
I know. Yeah. Well, actually, the reason I called the book How They Achieved rather than How They Succeeded was early on when I was first starting to write this, one of my interviewees said, I don't like that word succeed. You're going to have to redefine it.
Valued
right, it is.
Yeah, it is.
What's it going to mean?
Yeah.
And he said, I think you should use achieve. It's a much better term. And I think that was true. So
I see the distinction,
yeah. There is a distinction, because look what we value in our culture. Success is money or fame.
To a fault, I think, now in the modern experience.
Me too.
I said to somebody, you could make the most beautiful... Well, I think of poor Vincent van Gogh. He was painting these wonderful paintings at the time, and they were used for windows in a chicken coop. And it wasn't for, 100 years later that it was recognized. That
I didn't even know that.
Oh, yeah, he didn't sell a painting the whole time.
Well, I knew he didn't sell a painting, but I didn't know.
No, they were actually,
windows.
there was one of them. I don't know if it was the lily or lilac or sunflower or something. It had been used to block a window in a chicken coop, the way a lot of things. People could do that, but it doesn't give any value unless it fetches $1 million at Sotheby's or something. There's so much materialism noted to that. Maybe it's because there's a lack of security about the conditions in which the material world is evolving. I don't know where that comes from. Inordinate concentration on that now, it seems to me, in terms of defining success in monetary or in materialistic terms.
Well, I think it's very, very difficult not to get caught up in that. I mean, the people that march to the beat of their own drummer, I mean, they might say to the world and appear to the world to espouse to that theory, but I really don't think anyone can do that completely.
And to what theory now?
Well, to totally...
Art for art's sake or something?
Yeah, yes, exactly. Yeah. Totally live your life according to your own inner voice and not care what anyone else thinks, not care how the world views you. Just be, moving along doing your own thing. Maybe a great painter could do that, or an artist.
Yeah,
it would be easier. But
or
that's
something.
yeah.
That the dynamic between those two things are important. You get 100 trillion cells in your body, and each one is in communication with others. There's larger systems of which an individual is a part. So autarky probably is not. It could be even just I don't know, something like narcissism or something that is really unhealthy. That kind of thing. But we're getting far afield or something.
I want to tell you one more thing, and then I'll go back. I remember reading recently that the two most common personality disorders of our time are narcissism and what's called a borderline personality.
What's it? Oh, yeah.
A borderline personality is kind of what we were talking about a little while ago. It's someone who has trouble forming attachments with other people. They can't stay in a relationship. They can't stay in a job. They also can't be treated because they don't seek out help in therapy. They think that they're fine.
Yeah, right.
A narcissist can be treated. Medication will help a narcissist.
Really,
so will counseling, but not a borderline.
Lash is written on that really well in narcissism. I know some people think it's just egotism or a selfie. They'll confuse narcissism with a healthy self-esteem, and it's not. It's really a psychological illness. Yeah, people don't realize that, and it's widespread apparently. Right?
Well, they say that the narcissistic person had the attention of the mother for a brief period in infancy and then lost it.
Trauma.
And that's what. And then they say the borderline never had the attention of anyone.
Oh, I see.
And that's what. Now, I'm not a psychologist, but I remember reading that.
Well, the Hindus have told us for a long time, and others have too, that reality is a seamless web. There are no academic or any other disciplines in reality. Everything is connected to everything else. So, comprehensively understanding these things as a system is important, that kind of thing. But to these people that you interviewed, maybe you could share just a little bit in a one.
I will. I'm not avoiding you, but all of these things that we've been talking about.
It's all interesting. You go on and talking for hours, but yes.
They were all connected to
the book.
The book, because I wanted to find out what made these successful people tick.
All right.
I wanted to write a book that would be inspiring to other people who wanted to make a choice in terms of their career, and I wanted to see if there were some commonalities, as you said. And as I just said, the biggest commonality is, to a fault, every single person said that they didn't worry about their success. One of my questions was there ever a time when you were really concerned you were going to fail? And everyone said no.
They never considered that a possibility.
Well, they welcomed failure.
Oh, really? Interesting. As a learning experience.
As a learning experience.
That's really interesting.
And that's the thing that I think really makes up the psyche of a successful person.
Interesting, really. Not the successes, but the failures make the success, huh?
Yeah, because
it's a paradox.
It is a paradox.
Yeah.
Because if you can fail and totally screw up and then look around and think, that's what I did wrong, and just go
learn
right
from
back.
your mistakes,
Yeah,
negative
people
feedback.
admire you.
Yes, all right. Yeah.
I mean, it's really interesting. It's like a door-to-door salesman, I always think, that comes to your door. And
it's terrible.
It would be the worst job.
It would be
Wouldn't
just
it?
about.
The
Well,
worst.
for me it would be. I'm
Me
not
too.
very good at selling. Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
I would last about an instant. But
you may want this. If you do, take it.
Yeah.
But that's not the sales.
But you know what? I used to buy stuff from this vacuum cleaner guy who used to come to my door. And he never sold me anything for the first year. He'd come like once a month, how's your vacuum cleaner working? And I would always, instead of being annoyed, his attitude was so positive.
Yes.
And he never minded when I said, I'm busy, go away. So gradually I thought, well,
he would go away. He wouldn't persist. Oh, okay.
He'd
that's
go away.
interesting. Yeah, some of
and
them
then he'd
persist.
come back.
Yeah.
And then he'd come back.
Another time.
Yeah, and finally I started
You
to
bought a
buy
vacuum
things from him.
cleaner,
I thought, well, maybe he has something I need. Because he was so positive.
Yeah, right. So positive, right.
Yeah,
And that was
so
another characteristic of the people you talked to?
Filled with confidence in different ways.
Confidence. That's very important.
Yeah.
Self-confidence is very important. Okay.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
to distinguish self-confidence
from narcissism.
Right.
Exactly.
Is a trick, yeah.
It is a trick.
Yeah.
But, I mean, and everyone was confident in different ways. It's interesting. Some people ask me sometimes what's the difference between a CEO, for example, and an entrepreneur. And, most of the CEOs that I talked to were more conservative because they had to be. I mean,
Yeah.
they came into this organization.
Big organization in place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They had to abide by certain rules and regulations. They were watched.
Captain of a big ocean liner. It moves
Exactly.
slowly and doesn't turn on a dime. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
They were. It was interesting. A lot of the people that I talked to had been in the military, and had come out right after the war and
Mhm.
hadn't known what they were going to do,
Mhm.
and they'd been offered a job by someone they knew
Yeah.
in military.
Mhm.
And they basically, most of these men, and that's the difference between that generation and our generation today,
Mhm.
most of those men never left their job.
I see. Yeah.
They
right.
went to
Yeah,
work for these major
now
companies.
there's a lot of churn.
Huge.
You know,
Woo.
everybody's moving all over.
Mhm.
And there's a big distinction between the CEO, and you talked with, I think, just some of them, Frank Carey you
Yep.
talked with, and some
Frank
of the people
Carey.
who were CEOs.
Mhm.
And then you also talked to entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
And the distinction between the two, the entrepreneur is more like a fast-moving speedboat or something. I guess that's, or an
Yeah,
artist.
a fast-moving speedboat with
Yeah.
blinders on.
Okay.
The entrepreneur really didn't care if people liked them or not.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't care if they pleased people, for the most part. I mean, they wouldn't say this to me, but they were just determined to achieve their vision.
Mm-hmm.
They had this goal in mind,
Bill
or
Gates,
this idea.
maybe.
Bill Gates. Oh, yeah, definitely.
He did it in spades.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he truly did it.
Yes, right.
And Steve Jobs.
Yes, indeed. Or Case,
Mhm.
you know, from, that kind
Mhm.
of entrepreneur, yeah.
And, you know, I interviewed Dan Case, who's Steve Case's
Yes,
brother,
I noted that. Yes, that's right. Yeah.
for the book.
Yeah.
And he was sort of an extraordinary guy, so young.
Yeah, 40.
Yeah, and here
Yeah.
he was CEO of this major corporation.
Right, yeah.
And very polished, very professional,
Right,
very
right.
much
He went out
at
to San
ease.
Francisco because he had a girlfriend.
Yeah.
Turned him down.
You did read
First
the
day
book.
I did indeed. Yeah, that was kind of funny. He went and positioned himself out there,
Yeah.
and then she blew him off the first
Yeah.
day or something. It was funny. But
Yeah.
then you also did Kay Waddle,
Faye Waddleton.
Faye Waddleton, yeah,
Mhm.
and others. And so you got CEO, entrepreneur,
Mhm.
and then what do you call visionary?
Visionaries,
Yeah.
right.
And you got them about equal measure in the book, more or
Yeah.
less. A little more entrepreneurs maybe. But
Yeah.
the visionaries are of a different order of leadership
Mhm.
then. Right?
I think the
Or
visionaries,
achievement.
they are different because they didn't want to create a company. They wanted to change the world in
Right.
some way.
Okay,
And,
that's interesting. Yeah.
I mean, Faye Waddleton I just find so impressive.
Planned Parenthood and
Yes.
right. She's
Now
a
she's
major figure. Yeah.
Major figure, and
Yeah.
she's also just totally devoted to whatever she focuses on. And her issue now is women, and she has an institute in New York called the Center for Gender Equality.
Okay. Yeah.
And she studies women's position in the world, in the country, in terms of equality.
Yeah.
And
Big issue, yeah,
she's
yeah.
really she's accomplished so much.
And generically, the qualities of the visionary would be different as those from the entrepreneur and from the CEO, you think? I mean, the psychological mindset or the
Yeah, I
way
mean,
of being. And you had the Cornfield. He was a Buddhist.
Jack Cornfield.
Is he the Buddhist?
Yeah, he's
Yes.
the Buddhist.
And they got different, and Mondavi, I think.
And Robert Mondavi, I think, is
the
under
wine fellow.
CEOs.
Oh, he's under CEO.
What
Okay.
an amazing guy he
Yeah,
is.
well, all the characters are amazing. I mean, they have achieved amazing success in the world.
They have achieved amazing
Mhm.
success. But Robert Mondavi is 93 or
God
something
bless
like
him.
that.
God bless him.
And
yeah.
he's passionate. He's sharp as a tack,
Mm-hmm.
passionate, so well-read, so attractive, so
Mhm.
charming, madly in love with his wife,
Uh-huh,
a
great.
great father to
Yeah.
his kids and
Mhm.
grandchildren. I mean, he's just so... And
A
what
real
is-
role model.
Yeah, and really, do you like to drink wine?
No, I don't, as a matter of fact.
You don't?
No, not particularly. I'm not, I just don't like the taste of
Yeah.
alcohol as it happens,
Yeah, well,
Mm.
you're lucky.
Yeah, I know. I just don't, I'd rather have grape juice than wine, I
Uh-huh.
think. But that's not a very, I
Yeah.
shouldn't confess that, but
No, I
I
think...
just don't happen.
But remember, before Robert Mondavi came around, we didn't really care about wine in this country. I mean, people had wine if they wanted to be very fancy. Maybe
Yeah.
they have French wine.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But we didn't really have California wine.
Yeah, California wine's all over
Mhm.
the world now, and he
Mhm.
was largely responsible for that.
He sure was.
How did you live, if I may? You've got 20, you say. I mean,
Mhm.
how did you happen to select the people you did? Were they people that were in your bailiwick, as it were, or your, in your world? And how did you limit it to 20? And were there people that you would like to have included in that, representing different forms of visionary expression or something? Because there's so many people where this formula you could go and You know what I'm saying? And how did you limit it to 20? And would you have liked to have talked to a lot of other people? And could the idea be expanded upon as a generic idea that we talk to people? And then one last little addendum, if I could. The idea of achievement, it might be somebody is running a major corporation or achieving great success or something like that, but achievement comes in many different forms. You know, so the achievement might be that Boy Scout troop that really hit the, you know, did really well, or something that isn't on such a large scale or something, you know. That's just a little addendum.
But one thing I found, you know, I was really mercenary when I set out to write this book.
Oh, you did?
Yes, because
mercenary.
I had mercenaries. See, here we go.
Yeah, here it comes, folks. Here it comes.
The truth.
The real Lucinda, huh? Yeah.
No, I wanted to make a success. One of my goals was I wanted to publish a book before I was 50.
All right.
And I read this. I know you think I'm way under 50, and I couldn't possibly.
Amazing you had a child.
Amazing.
Yeah,
amazing.
Right, yeah.
But one of my goals was to do that because I had read that the key to happiness was that you set reasonable goals for yourself and achieve them.
All right.
That was, you know, one of the things that made people happy. Yeah.
What if you set unreasonable goals? Then you're in deep trouble.
Then you're in deep trouble.
No.
Because that's why I think we have so many unhappy, bitter people.
You do.
Because the narcissists will set unreasonable goals for themselves and never achieve them and then blame it all on other people.
Okay, it's a tricky thing, though, isn't it? You know, because the Columbus city was going to go and sail across the blue, and a lot of people said, no, you can't do. You know, that's not to be done, but he did. He stretched, our grasp shall extend our reach or something to the people that will do the outstanding thing, you know, or try and do something. You understand what I'm saying? That's another part of the equation,
Yeah.
But anyway, I was getting you off the story of your mercenary kind of selection of the people you did for the book.
Well, you know something I thought about a lot of times. I would say to my students, who are your heroes today?
Yeah, heroes and heroines. Where have all the heroes and heroines gone? Yeah,
well,
Bob Ashford, who was on the program last week, he said, you know, he's got a CD that says, where are all the heroes and heroines?
Yeah.
Heroes and heroines are important, and they could be people that are right part of the extended family or something, too, more than they are in some people's mind. They just don't have any role models, I guess is the overworked term. Yeah.
But I think we've traditionally liked to have sort of people that were way out of our realm as our heroes. I mean, when we were children, didn't you read fairy tales or stories of people that were, like, I love to go into the library and get books like on women like Madame Curie and Florence Nightingale.
Sure. Or Richard Halliburton, do you remember him?
Oh, yeah.
The Royal Road to Romance.
Oh, yeah.
Did you go adventuring and everything? And that kind of, yeah, sure, yeah, right. Yeah, I understand, yeah. Or I got intellectual heroes. Buckminster Fuller's an intellectual hero of mine. Marshall McLuhan, William Blake. There's a whole list of them.
Wonderful.
And we do have the greats from, you know, I looked at the thing the other day, it said the famous from Rome. There was hundreds of years, thousands. They had about 30 people that were listed as the ones that come down to us from ancient Rome. They were all of the arts, practically. You know, it's kind of interesting. But people in the arts, I'm sorry, I went off on a little tangent there.
No, but it's always, but you know, to me, what I thought is, if I want this book to be a success, which I do.
Yes, okay.
I think it will be a success if I can find some heroes or success stories that will be identifiable success stories in the eyes of the world.
Now, success is a big word.
I know. Here we
go
again.
Success is a big word, and it would be success in terms. If you were to look, we got 6 billion human beings now, right? And then that's in a biological thing. Success is to be defined in terms of the criteria by which you define success. And how do we define success? And like there are some people that haven't been successful materially, but have been very successfully, or maybe like Mr. Van Gogh. He was not at all successful in his time, but then he was later. You know, the success. How do we define success in terms? Do we have some criteria of human purpose, and does that get us to some philosophy that understands what it's all about? I mean, the whole evolutionary process.
So you want me to answer everything?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, just because we only got 10 minutes left, so you got to get.
Oh God!
I'm saying the terms of success would be what the criteria of human purpose is. Is there a purpose to biological evolution and humanity? You said you had spiritual roots and so forth.
I use my own little definition or idea about what would be a success because I wanted the book to be interesting to a big, broad spectrum of people.
Okay.
I wanted somebody to go into a bookstore as graduating from college and think, gee, this might help me discover what it is I want to do.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, or I wanted like somebody who'd maybe lost their job and been out of work and felt like they had no future to read these stories about other people's starts in life.
Yeah, because these are career tales, aren't they? Yeah,
career tales.
So you got a career tale bias in a certain sense, and a lot of people are interested in that. Oh, fair enough. Okay, good.
And so the success of the people in the book to me was, on a lot of arenas. There were obviously business successes, CEOs. In the entrepreneurs, there were obvious entrepreneurial successes. And in the visionaries, there were people who maybe didn't have a lot of money or even a lot of fame. But I felt in their own way they had really touched people's lives.
And had achieved.
Right. Sometimes without their even knowing it.
And how did you select the 20 that you did?
Well, I had a lot more.
I would have thought. How did you winnow it down?
Unfortunately,
or was it chance and necessity, or what?
The book had to be a certain amount of pages.
Yes, all right. Yeah.
And so it was just, it was a difficult process because everybody was interesting to me.
That's the problem.
Everybody.
Everybody and everything is interesting. It makes for an interesting life, but it can be difficult. But you can do pattern recognition then. You can get patterns that you can recognize. And you think these people, in a certain sense, represent generic or patterns that be applicable to the human condition in a very real sense, right?
In a very real sense, because they come from all over the map.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my favorites is a woman named Alice Waters.
Yes.
Who's a great chef and has become a good friend and owns a restaurant in Berkeley called Chez Panisse.
Yes.
Which is renowned all over the world for food lovers.
Yeah.
And the thing that Alice did that was so extraordinary is she started that restaurant without knowing much about cooking and not having any money, but it was her dream because she wanted to have a place where people got together to eat.
Oh, right.
That was important to her. And now what she's done is she started a program in the school system in Berkeley, and it's gradually spreading to other places, called Edible Schoolyard. And she plants gardens in these schools and teaches kids about, what's healthy and nutrition. And then the kids all sit down and have meals together, which they may not have ever done in their whole life.
Right. That's a pattern that can be replicated by people, that kind of thing. Yeah. And there's a lot of these stories that are good for people to have and to draw upon in their setting out their own life path. Let's call it that.
I think they're inspirational. I'm a very positive person.
You are, okay, yeah.
And I always told my students, never say anything negative. Like if you're in an interview and someone says, why did you change jobs, never say, because I didn't get along with the boss, or blah, blah, or I didn't like what I was doing. Find something to be positive about in the old job and then look for new opportunities in the new job. Never look back and say something was negative.
You think it's good to try and see the positive side of who you're interrelating with and try to find that kind of thing with people rather than look for the negative?
Yes.
Is that an important part of empathetic understanding?
Yeah. Absolutely. Like
and assume the good?
Assume the good. I try to do that with everybody.
Yeah.
If they initially have an approach to me that's very off-putting,
hostile or something.
I say to myself, no, that's just a perception. Let's try to see.
That's just a facade.
Right.
Right.
Let's see what else there can be.
And that's part of successful human communication in a certain sense. I don't know if that's the same as Dale Carnegie talking about.
Oh, I think so.
How to
win trends and influence people.
Yeah, that was an important book.
I thought it was
shaping a lot of people's consciousness. Yeah.
Yeah, a great book.
Are you optimistic for the human prospect as you begin to look ahead?
Well,
for the human prospect,
I am. I am optimistic. I really believe that things happen in cycles.
Okay.
And back to the institute I'm on the board of at Brown.
Yes.
I think more studies about why conflict happens and how to resolve it. More studies on how to make people feel included.
Yeah.
Like, for example, these old age homes now where instead of having just older people in a community, they're mixing them up.
Back to the extended family.
If I were 80, wouldn't you rather live in a community?
Have some teenagers around. Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Yeah, and live with other people. I don't want to live all alone in an apartment.
Or with people only of your same age group or something. Yeah, it should be more of a mixing. It used to be, it has been for a long time. Maybe there will be some of that beginning to emerge. Lord knows there's a lot of challenges. There's a great deal of potentiality for good
Mm-hmm.
in the human condition. But as you began saying, there's an awful lot of problems in the world as well.
Mm-hmm.
And your book might help point some people toward being able to do that for themselves, and perhaps as a template or a model for many other people to get a view of the world that would help not only themselves but people around them. I mean, what I'm saying is it has a larger model kind of role, a role model that it could play for affecting greater numbers of people than the individual who was benefited by it, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh, I hope you're right, Harold.
Yeah, it's an important,
that's very
it's an important kind of thing. There should be that kind of that kind of thing in the society, I think, you know.
I think the most important thing is that it tells you it's okay to make a mistake.
All right.
And if you screw up, don't be afraid to start again.
Mm-hmm.
And the most successful people did that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like one person said, fear was like a low-grade fever. It was around all the time.
Mm-hmm.
They just got used to it. So when they made a mistake, it was like, I made a mistake.
Slough it off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pick yourself up and
Yeah.
get back in the game and that kind of thing. And that's a characteristic, yeah. Well, there's a great number of challenges in the book. Do you see another book along these lines?
Oh,
or
I
another
hope
book?
so.
You want to pursue this kind of a
Yeah, I
thing?
loved writing this book. I mean,
You
what
did.
could be more wonderful?
What about
Going
the
around.
idea of doing it with the multimedia? Doing you interviews, you condense the interviews
Mm-hmm.
down into a literary form, that
Yeah.
sort of thing. Did you enjoy the interviewing process and talking to the
I
people?
loved
Because that's
it.
exchange that is different than
Oh, yeah.
the written word, you know.
I absolutely loved
Maybe
it.
you could do some things in television or something
That
where
would
you
be
would
fun.
interview people in a multimedia context and stream it to the internet. Do you think there's a role for that kind of thing in terms of the expanding communications capabilities that exist in the world that
I
could
would think
benefit
so.
human society?
I would think
You think
so.
you'd want to do that kind of thing, maybe?
Oh.
I don't mean to put thoughts in your head, but it's
No,
just
I
a
love
thought.
doing things
Because you're
like
very
that.
personable and good with the camera. Did you videotape or tape the interviews you did?
No, I tape recorded them.
Only sound.
Mm-hmm.
Makes a difference, yeah. Because the
I think
video is
so, too.
more tactile. It's more all-inclusive of all the censoring. We did a program with a Saudi Arabian prince once where the thing got knocked out, the video got knocked out,
Mm-hmm.
and we did a media experiment by getting photographs from National Geographic to fill out the video, and then we did a radio, we did a print, and then we did a audio, and then we did a mixed media thing.
Wow.
And the impression that came across was he had tremendous tactile power and so forth,
Amazing.
and it came across differently in each of the different media, just a thought, you know.
Wow.
But we did that as a Marshall McLuhan type media
Oh,
experiment.
great.
Well, anyway, I really, it just got started. A million things we could talk about, and I really enjoyed the book. It's very
Oh,
good, and I
thank
think
you.
people would do very well to pick it up, and wish you all the best.
Thanks so much.
You think you might pursue this, though?
I hope so. I had a great time doing it.
You did. It was a pleasurable
I
thing.
loved it. I
The,
loved it.
the writing and the putting of it, the whole
Yeah.
process, right?
Yeah,
Did
meeting
you-
all those people.
Did you enjoy the interviewing?
I loved it.
It wasn't you were shy.
No, I wasn't shy.
You got
They
over
were
your
talking.
shy.
That's why I made
Oh, I
you talk.
see. The trick is you let the people talk, right? Well,
That's
you
my
do.
trick.
I must say, Lucinda Watson, you do a pretty good job of talking some good wisdom as well.
Oh,
you know.
thanks.
And
Thanks.
I'm just pleased to welcome you to the program, and I want to just let's let the people see it again. It's just now out now,
Yes,
and
it
the
is.
publisher is John
Wiley and Son.
And so here's the way it would look, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. This is the way it would look in the bookstore, and it's called again How They Achieved, and it's written by our guest Lucinda Watson. And Lucinda, thank you really very much for coming in.
thank
It's been a
you.
great pleasure talking
I had
to
a
you.
great time. You're a very interesting man.
Well, there's a lot to be interested in. The world is you're very interesting. The world is an extremely interesting place,
Yeah.
which I think is good that it is, because,
I agree.
yeah. Okay, in any case, we invite you to tune in. We'll be coming back again next week. That's it for this particular program. Lucinda, once again, all the best with the book
Thanks
and
so
with
much.
your communication ventures as you go on from this book on to other
Thank you.
ventures. We'll see you next time, and we look forward to that. And once again, Lucinda, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks a lot.
Oh, it goes by in a hurry, you know.
Yeah, I
could
can't
talk
believe
for
it.
hours, you know.
Really?
But it must have been fun going. How long did it take you to do the interviewing part of it?
Well, I started 3 years ago almost.
Okay.